Hello, Java Challenger, and I'm very happy that I have here today Dan Vega. And Dan Vega is a Java champion. He has over 20 years of experience in the software development industry. He's a Spring developer advocate for Broadcom. He has a YouTube channel mostly focused on Spring Framework and Spring Boot with more than 60K subscribers. And he's also writing a super cool book called The Fundamentals of Software Engineering. And he also runs the Spring Office Hours podcast. So, Dan Vega, you're very welcome to be here. How are you?
Great. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And thanks for inviting me on. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy to have you here. I'm sure we're going to have an amazing chat. So, Dan Vega, one thing that I always ask to the Java experts I invite here is about their career trajectories. So can you tell me more about your career trajectory? What were the challenges you went through, the career lessons?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just used the word expert. I don't know that I like being called an expert because I've never felt like an expert. And yeah, I guess that goes to kind of my career trajectory. It's funny and again, I'm a little bit older, so as you said, I've been doing this a long time now. And when I was in high school, the web wasn't what the web was today. So I always kind of tell the story, but my mom made me take a computer typing class in high school when computers weren't really as prevalent as they are today. And I was like, why are you making me take this class? Like, I don't need not what do I need to know how to type for, right? Like, and it turns out like that turned out to be like a really important class because right after high school, I really got into like computers, building computers. We don't build computers today, but 20 years ago, like that was all the rage. That was cool. Like being able to like save up to buy a 20 gig hard drive was like the coolest thing ever, and like putting your own computers together. And I kind of fell in love with building computers and then just like how do they work? And I really got into kind of the software side and like websites and being able to kind of like, build this thing from scratch. So I got into that. I decided to go to school at a two-year technical college. I felt really lost those 2 years. Like, what is this? How am I ever gonna do this? This seems like a foreign language to me right now. Like, what am I doing here? But I just decided, like this is something I'm really interested in. I need to like see this through. And so I pushed forward. I ended up I knew some people in California through some acquaintances, and I decided to move out to the Bay Area right out of college and join a startup. So I was like the seventh person in a startup, and we used Java there. But I didn't join as a Java developer. I joined as a kind of level 2 support specialist. And so at that point, I kind of got to like work with customers and work directly with the engineers and kind of see kind of both sides of this. And then I got, through that, I ended up getting to work on the web application. The website at this time was written in Struts. So that was kind of my first kind of introduction to Java outside of school. I learned Java in school, but I learned like the fundamentals. We didn't build any kind of web applications in school. And so I got thrown into Struts. That was interesting at the time. And, I just kind of progressed from there. I ended up moving back home, took like a web development job. Home is Cleveland, Ohio. I took a web development job and just kind of moved on from there. I spent like 4 years doing kind of just general web development. I moved into another position where I became like a senior developer. From there, I joined another company where we were doing Java and Groovy and Grails. And then I moved on from there to become a curriculum developer. I really always enjoyed teaching. So not like the formal aspect of teaching, but I early on in my career, we didn't have all of the resources we do today. Like there wasn't a GitHub, there wasn't a YouTube, there was a blog. So I started a blog and it was like, okay, I faced this really hard problem and I don't want other people to have to go through this. So I would just blog about my adventures in software development. And so I really enjoyed that part of it. So I kept doing that, and that kind of brought me to curriculum development. I joined like a coding boot camp. So that would be kind of, when I went through a 2-year technical school, this is kind of the same these days, coding bootcamp. And that was a lot of fun, just being around the students, like the energy of them, like wanting to learn this new thing and going back to like remembering like how lost I was, trying to help students through that. So that was a lot of fun. From there, I took an architect position, and a year after that, I ended up joining VMware at the time to become a Spring Developer Advocate. And that's, at a high level, that's kind of my career trajectory. But there's a lot of things we can kind of pick out from that. But at a high level, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Awesome. I'm really interested in what college course you've done.
Yeah, so it was an associate's degree at a 2-year technical school here in Ohio. And there was like some other courses in it. I'm trying to remember, but it was mainly like I think it was an applied science degree at the time. And I got thrown right into Java object-oriented program, not knowing anything else. So I basically took 2 years of Java. There was some other like technical things that we went through and some soft skills in the course, but it was really that. I could say, I really learned like this is what I want to do, but I don't know that I learned like how to become a programmer in that 2 years. I think when I moved out to the Bay Area, I again I was being a support specialist, but at the same time I knew I wanted to be a programmer. So at nights I would be learning things, and I actually lived near Berkeley, and I think I wrote about this on my website at one point, but I ended up hiring an undergrad, like a TA from Berkeley, to like meet with me a couple days a week and just teach me some things. Cause like I wasn't going to Berkeley, but it was for a way for him to make some more money. And it was a way for me to like learn from somebody who was teaching other people this. So I think, the, the 2-year school kind of got me really interested in it. And then it was really on me to kind of like, this is what I want to do. What do I need to start learning? How do I get better at this? How do I get into this industry?
How did you figure out your path to start in the market?
You know, I say this a lot, but I feel like I've gotten lucky in like, what do they say about luck? It's like opportunity meets like resilience or whatever. Like I feel like just being like this was what I wanted to do, and taught, making acquaintances, building my professional network, right? And I got that first job, and then I wanted to come home. So like how could I come home? I found a job while I was in San Francisco to come back home to Cleveland, and I met this person who owned this company, this little software development consultancy company. And I think like from there, it was being involved in the community. So I told you I started this blog. I would go to conferences, I would go to meetups, and just through the people that I've met throughout my career, I feel like the next opportunity was always there because of my involvement in the community. So I attribute almost everything to that and kind of dumb luck and meeting the right people along the way.
Yeah, actually, there's a very important lesson. The people you meet, like when you go to conferences, you meet
Yeah.
amazing people, you learn
Mhm.
more about the technologies.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you only have the context of your college or your
Yep.
technical course, it's very difficult to grow
Yeah.
because our mind is so, like, our view is still so narrow, only with the college perspective.
Yep.
But conferences is an amazing place for sure to learn, to meet new people, to meet Java references. So it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah, and then you meet these people and you're like, "Oh, wow, like I want to do what that person's doing because they seem like they have everything together." And like, okay, you can have a conversation with that person. Like, how did you get to where you are? I want to do what you're doing. So yeah, it is like, yes, you have to have the technical skills to kind of make it in this career, which anyone can do, by the way, if that's what you're interested in. But building your professional network and making sure you're staying in contact with people, and yeah, like just being involved in the community has done so much for me. So
Yeah, it helps so much to know what's your next step, right?
yeah.
Because then you're gonna know, oh, this technology is super cool. I want to focus on that because I know if I focus in this technology, I will make a good career.
Hmm.
So, and so it's definitely worth it. to build a good networking. And so you also mentioned that you were practicing and studying technical technologies back in the day. So how was your learning process to get your first job?
So I think, I really was involved with kind of building web applications. And so that kind of first entrance into that was like the Struts world. And for me, like, again, building web applications, Struts was a little overkill at the time. Like, it was very complicated to build a web application that talked to a database, right? And so for me, I started looking at like, what are some other ways to build web applications? And I came across like ASP.NET and PHP and this thing called Cold Fusion. And me and a buddy ended up building this like e-commerce platform for this big luggage company at the time. And we built it in two different technologies, ASP.NET on the back end and Cold Fusion on the front end. Don't ask me why we did that. I think it was two of our skills at the time. And I think like taking a job where I didn't really know what I was doing and just kind of immersing myself in that for a while, just like, okay, let me like learn this and put this together and build this. We ended up building this really cool project. And so I at that time I was like, oh, I like building web applications. I want to know how to do this more. And it was just by trial and error. Like, how do I build this thing? Let me do some research. Let me fail. Failure is a really kind of big component of kind of learning. So I think being hands-on, failing, and then just keep going at it. And when you're building web applications, there's so many components to it, right? There's like user interface, there's backend, there's DevOps, like all those things. And so I think just kind of immersing myself in that, failing and building was really a big teacher at the time.
Amazing. Another question I get a lot from my mentees is, what is exactly a senior software developer? I know it changes from company to company, but in
Yeah.
your perspective, what is a senior software developer?
Yeah. So it's, I hate saying like, some people like to put numbers on things, and I don't like doing that. Like senior software development for me is like you have experience doing something. And so I've seen developers become a senior software developer in a year, and I've seen them, 5 to 10 years, right? It's all about that experience that you're gaining. So I think first and foremost is problem solving. I think at the core of everything we do as software developers, it's learning how to become a good problem solver. So when you're asked to like build this complex system, like nobody can just sit down and build this huge entire complex application, right? It's all about taking this big problem and breaking it down into smaller problems and breaking those smaller problems into even smaller problems. And I think after a while, as a developer, you start to notice similar patterns and similar problems that you've solved for before. And so I think the experience of just problem solving and seeing the same problems over and over really starts to make you a senior developer. Because again, everything that I've done in my career is I've done it 20 times now. Like there's nothing new, right? Maybe AI is kind of new to all of us, but outside of that, building applications, I've seen the same problems over and over. So I think at the core, problem solving. When it comes to like Java developers, again, just having experience. I don't know what that number is, but like being strong in like the core fundamentals of Java, being able to like write code, being able to read code is actually a much more fundamental skill than writing code. And I don't think people realize that when they get into programming because we read code much more than we write code. So being able to read code, understand code, and then at the Java level, like kind of core stuff. But I think understanding some of the like more advanced things. So like in the Java world, like understanding concurrency is like a really big thing. I think if you understand that, that can go a long way. And then really just like the experience of building applications. And through that, you'll come across frameworks and libraries. You'll build APIs, whether they're REST or GraphQL. You'll talk to databases. These can be relational or non-SQL. A lot of things that we work on today are distributed systems. So understanding like the complexities of building distributed architectures, right? Those are pretty big. Things like being able to understand observability, like monitoring applications to find problems and correct them. And then I think architecture is a big one. I think as a junior developer, you kind of start out just like, I just need to get this thing to work, right? So you get it to work and then like, okay, how could we improve this? So from a performance standpoint, what can we do better to improve this? From an architecture standpoint, is this the kind of the best solution to the problem? And then just kind of security is a big one. But also like as we're progressing throughout our career, I think as a senior developer, I think one of the things that we really can kind of focus on is our leadership and our soft skills. So as one thing I see senior developers is like being able to mentor junior developers. Like you have the experience, can you help mentor junior developers? You know, doing things like code reviews and not just kind of checking a box and saying like that's good, but really kind of taking a look at that code review and going through it and then helping people understand like why you made the comments you did, why you would might refactor something the way you did. And then just the ability to kind of make some of those technical decisions that you weren't making as a junior developer.
Very good. So you mentioned some points here that I think it's very interesting. And I think it's a very difficult question, but how would a person become a senior software developer in 1 year?
Ooh, that for me, that would be tough. So I think it took me a lot longer than that. I think you could get there if you kind of immersed yourself in it. And first off, I think you'd need to be at the right company too, right? Like you need to be somewhere where you're gaining experience and you're working on complex problems. But I think just being able to kind of master a wide range of technologies quickly, that would be important. And then, like I said, understanding that like to be a senior software developer is not just kind of the technical aspect as you're moving along, trying to mentor other developers, kind of be in a leadership role. I think the two sides of it, the technical expertise and the kind of leadership and soft skills, as quickly as you could do that, maybe you could get there in a year.
What is a good leader for you in software development?
I think just someone who is both leading by example, so they're putting in the work. You can clearly see that they are someone who cares about their craft. They are constantly learning. This industry is not one of those industries where you get into and you just kind of work 9 to 5 and go home and forget about it. I'm constantly like thinking about things that I'm working on. But yeah, I think from a senior, leading by example, learning, and then really kind of helping others. Like I often tell people like when I used to interview people a lot, like we don't want to hire the smartest person in the world. Like we work with other people. Like we want to work with people that are great and easy to get along with. And so I think kind of the soft side of things is like the soft skills side of things is like, are you able to work well with others? Are you able to collaborate with others? Can you, again, going back to like the code review example, don't just like put a comment in here like this is trash, rewrite it. Like what are some things that we can improve on and how do we improve on those? So I think, empathy goes a long way in this industry. I think a lot of the times like we don't have enough empathy as software developers. Like you got to remember that like this person who you might be mentoring is a junior developer is like coming to work scared. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, how do I get this done? I don't know if I can be a software developer, right? Like having empathy, like understanding that like you were once in that position and trying to like think about that in your day-to-day job. So yeah, I think just being a leader, technical leader, and a kind of mentor, those things go a long way for me.
Awesome. You mentioned about important soft skills. What other soft skills would be important other than leadership?
Ooh, that's a good question. So again, collaboration's a big one. Like being open to collaboration for me is big. You're not a solo developer here. You're not like just putting your headphones on and cranking out 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. And there are times for that, but like being able to collaborate with your team is a big one. It depends on your role. I'm not saying that everybody needs to do this, but presentation skills go a long way. And they don't and when I say presentation skills, I don't mean like you have to go to a conference and stand in front of 1,000 people, but even if it's like a lunch and learn, being able to talk to your team about like this cool new technology that you're learning and you want to share it with your group. I think that's a really good place to start if you're ever interested in presenting, just kind of talking to coworkers at lunch about this cool thing that you learned. So I think presentation skills go a long way in our industry. Again, even if you're not going to get up at a conference somewhere. So yeah, collaboration, empathy is a big one, and presentation skills, I think.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who struggle with empathy.
Yeah.
What would be your advice for developers who are not empathetic?
I mean, I would just say put yourself in other people's positions. And I think this is a good life lesson as well. You know, you always say, like, you're walking past some random stranger on the street. You have no idea what that person's going through. I mean, we all have our struggles, our day-to-day struggles, our life struggles, and you have to remember that. And, you know, as frustrated as you might be in a moment of something that's not working, just remember, I don't know any, I don't know about you, but I don't know any developers who have just like gone through this career, just like, this is the easiest thing I've ever done. I love doing this. It's so easy. Like, we've all had struggles. Like, it's not easy. I mean, it can be done, but it's not easy. And so just trying to remember that, like, okay, I know everything now, but you know, at one point in my career, I remember that struggle, and just trying to put yourself in that position, and that everybody comes from different backgrounds. Like, your career path is way different than my career path, and we have to remember that when working with people. And again, as well as that fits into our world of software development, I think it fits into life even bigger. So
Definitely. I think this is a very important lesson, like to put yourself in someone else's place
mhm,
because, you know, for example, a senior software developer was already a junior developer.
mhm,
So we're not helping the junior developer to advance faster.
yeah,
And it's a
yeah,
learning situation because the more a senior developer mentors a junior developer, the more the senior developer grows and the junior developer also grows. So it's
yeah.
it's a
It's a
synergy
symbiotic
happening.
relationship. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've like really enjoyed throughout my career is they always say, like, if you want to learn something, teach it, right? Because you have to learn it once to actually understand it yourself. You have to learn it a whole lot better to be able to teach it back to someone. So if a junior developer is coming to you with a question and you don't know the answer to it, like, that's exciting to me. Like, oh, okay, I'm not sure. Let me go kind of hunt that down and find you an answer. So yeah, I think, you know, that's been a lot of fun throughout my career. And I think that's something senior developers should definitely embrace.
Yeah. Can you tell me more about the role of a curriculum developer?
Yeah, so I got into the boot camp, and my role was basically to help with all the materials that the students would go through and help with all the materials that the instructors would use. So in our boot camp, we had kind of we had two tracks. Like, everybody was on the same track. Like, let's learn the fundamentals of like command line and Git and just web in general. And then half the class went off and did like C# and ASP.NET. And the other half went off and did Java and Spring. And I would help put together all the materials for the course. So we had documentation. So I'd do a lot of writing, technical writing, work with the team. We had technical writers there as well that would help kind of clean some things up, editors. So we go through and we write a lot of technical documentation. I create a lot of videos for like certain subjects. So, like, here's this. We'd write a lot of the code examples that the students would go through. Like, we had different like challenges, like, hey, today you're going to build a vending machine application in Java, like strictly command line. How does that work? So we'd kind of we'd work backwards, write the solution, and then say, like, here are some of the steps you can take to like kind of build that out. We'd write a lot of tests. So I'd write a lot of tests for all the different applications that they were writing so that, hey, they check their source code in, we'd run it against some tests and see if, you know, those things pass. So I kind of got to do a lot of things as a curriculum developer. And then I even got a chance to like get in front of the class and teach a few times. And then on the instructor side of things, it was working with them. Like, okay, what are you trying to get out of this particular lesson? What are some things that I can help provide you with this, some context on the subject, some better examples that you can walk through in the class. So yeah, I got to kind of see both sides of that.
Awesome. So, how was your experience when you worked for the startup company?
Yeah, it was great. I think if everybody, you know, I think everybody, if you can, try to take positions with different types of companies, right? Like, so I've been at a startup, I've been at a Fortune 500 company, I've kind of seen it all, and I think there's pros and cons to everything. For me at the startup, it was like, hey, like we don't have these mandates on like the technology you're going to use or the tools you're going to use. In a startup, you're really able to like wear a bunch of different hats and use a whole bunch of different ranges of technology, right? So I think that was kind of exciting, being able to kind of use whatever I wanted to use and learn whatever I wanted to learn and like wear many different hats, as opposed to when you're in like some Fortune 500 company. These are the things we use. These are the tools you're going to use. These things are not allowed. And this is what you're going to do. So, but again, pros and cons to each, but I enjoyed my time there. I probably would have stayed longer if it wasn't so expensive to live in the Bay Area at the time. And it still is, but yeah, and then I just decided that I got homesick and came back home.
Awesome. So, you mentioned that you wore many hats. So, you
Mhm.
wore hats of software developer, mentor, teacher, content creator, curriculum developer, enterprise architect. Which of those hats was the most challenging?
I think just being a software developer, and I say just being a software developer, but being a software developer is, it's always been challenging. I don't, from college to today, I felt like everybody else learned at a much more rapid pace than I did. Looking back on that, that's probably not the case, but I never felt like, okay, I gotta work 10 times harder than everybody else to like learn this thing. So it was a lot of failure and a lot of like trying to find the solution to the problem. Again, I'm dating myself here, but we didn't have YouTube and Git and GitHub and like all of these resources that we do, AI. We didn't have these resources. So when I failed, it was not easy to find a solution. It was talking to people, it was scouring the internet for that random blog post of somebody else that came across that problem. But that really taught me, right? Like failure is a big part of I think software development, like and probably life in general, but being able to fail and learn from that and then move on to the next thing and fail at that and learn from that. So I think just being a software developer, it's never been easy, but it's always been like fun. I love the challenge. I love being able to like solve problems. So I think being a software developer, even today, is still challenging for me.
Yeah. There are developers though who give up. Like they do interviews, they fail, they
Hmm.
do another one, they fail again, they try again, they fail again. And it's very difficult to keep up. Do you have any advice for those developers who struggle to continue, keep going? Because I know there are so many developers who give up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking a lot about metaphors in life, but like you're gonna face adversity in any form of life, and it really is up to you. Like, what do you want to do? And again, I kind of made a conscious decision early on that like this is what I want to do. I don't care it's gonna get done. Like I'm going to do this, and I think you have to have that mindset no matter what you do. You hear about like people like NBA stars or football stars or soccer stars, right? Like you hear about these people and you look at like how great they are at their craft and you just think like, wow, it must be nice that like they're just given this God-given talent. But like if you watch any kind of documentaries on extremely successful people, like nothing was ever given to them. Like people worked their butt off to get to where they are. And so, there's that famous picture of like the iceberg, like this is what you see, this is what you don't see. Like you have to put in the work. And yes, at times it's going to be not fun. It's going to be painful. You're going to go on 10 interviews and get 10 rejections. but you just have to stick with it, and you have to learn from it. So if we go back to the interviewing portion of it, like, why am I failing these interviews? Don't just take it as a rejection of like, this person doesn't like me or doesn't think that I'm good enough. Follow up with those people and go, hey, what was the reason that I didn't get selected here? And learn from that. So, oh, we didn't think you were strong enough in distributed architecture. Okay, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to spend the next 2 months learning that for the next interview that I'm on. And so you just have to be resilient and you have to learn from failure. And I think anything in life, you can do whatever you want in this life. And maybe going through these interviews, you realize you don't want to do this, and that's okay. But if this is something you want to do, you can do it.
Yeah. I think a big lesson here when you're failing too much on interviews is to be humble,
Mhm.
because I see the ego of many developers being on their way, and they think that it's the interviewer's fault that they failed
Yep.
in the interview. They don't take responsibility,
Yep.
and then they don't take any action.
Yeah.
They don't even
That's a great
have the
point.
courage to ask for feedback because they think
Yeah.
they are right and the interviewer is wrong. And then the growth doesn't happen.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I think, if you start getting rejected over and over, there's the other side of it. You start getting rejected over and over again, you get that imposter syndrome. Like, okay,
yeah,
maybe I'm not good enough to do this.
yeah,
And I can't emphasize it enough. You are. Like this, okay, if you want it to be like some PhD level there's like a 1% of software engineers who are working on the most complicated problems our society has to solve. Okay, those people are probably really, I'm not one of those people, but like there is a number of software development jobs out there for you and I. And if that's something you want to do, you can do it. Again, imposter syndrome is a real thing. I've been doing this for 24 years. If you asked me to go interview with like Netflix today and solve some leak code problems, I'd be terrified. Like I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to like write a binary search in Java like from scratch. Like I don't do that every day. So I would have to prepare for that. I would have to like sit down and like catch up on those types of interviewing questions, right? So imposter syndrome is real for somebody who's been doing this a year and 25 years. And as long as you can recognize this and understand that like imposter syndrome is not you not being good enough, it's you caring about what you're about to do. Like you care so much that you want to be a software developer that you're getting these doubts of like, I can't do this. And that's a good thing. Like it's really good to like have that fear of like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I think to me, that means you're on the right path. Like this is something you should be doing. You just need to work hard at it and push forward.
yeah, imposter syndrome. It's within every one of us. It's all the time. So we need to be constantly, taking action and learning something new and be humble. I think that's the
Yes.
most important lesson. Be
Yep.
humble, keep
Agreed.
trying, and if you keep trying, there's no doubt you're gonna get it. You're gonna
Yep.
succeed.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So one subject that is very interesting to me, because I think that's one of the most important skills for any software developer, is about problem solving.
Hmm.
You talked about breaking down problems and making them simpler so that you are able to solve those smaller problems. Is
Yep.
there anything else you advise developers to become better at problem solving?
I think just with experience, you get to see more problems, right? So, if maybe you're in a position at work and you kind of do the same things over and over again, and you're not seeing a variety of different problems you can solve, start building your own things. Maybe contribute to open source on the side, maybe build your own. One of the things I've done is my entire career is I have like a personal website, and that's kind of evolved over the years. But it gave me something to work on and like try different things and like learn new things. And I think, being kind of subjected to different types of problems allows you like the brain to think in a different way. And I never tell people to kind of leave jobs just to leave jobs, but if you're in a position where like I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, I'm not really growing here. That is one reason to look for another position somewhere else. It's not always monetary, right? You're like, sure, we all need to make money and we want to make more money, but if you're not in a position where you feel like you're growing at a certain company, that's another reason to look for a position. So I think challenging yourself, whether that's within your company, moving to another company, building your own things, just kind of gets you that exposure to different problems. So I think, and again, as we mentioned, we talked about earlier, after a while, you start to see the same problems over and over, and you're able to kind of solve those a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think that's a very important lesson to get exposed to different problems because then you're
Yeah.
able to recognize patterns more quickly and you're
Yeah.
going to solve those problems more quickly as well.
Yep.
So how did your passion for Spring start?
Yeah. So I said I started in Struts. I moved over to this also sits on the JVM, by the way, this language called Cold Fusion, which is a way of like building web applications. And I think like Cold Fusion, PHP, .NET at the time, they all kind of did something for me, which was like, hey, there's all these like tools to like build web applications, and it kind of just lets me focus on like what do I need to build and kind of instead of like infrastructure, right? And I think Spring came along and did the same thing for me. I was like, the complexities of struts and J2EE at the time, like, this is just so much to build like a web application. Like, why are we overcomplicating this so much, right? And then Spring came along and it was like, okay, well, we're going to handle infrastructure. And if you need to talk to a database, you don't need to use these low-level APIs anymore. This is a JDBC template, and it makes it easy to talk to a database. So it was like taking away the infrastructure stuff and just letting me focus on like the problem at hand, which is like building this particular type of application. So yeah, I think that kind of really kind of kicked it off for me, not having to deal with all that other stuff.
Yeah, Spring is amazing. It makes backend development with Java so easy
Mhm.
and productive. I really like the tool. It's really, really good.
Yeah, you mentioned the Spring Office Hours podcast. We just had an episode yesterday where we talked about Java without Spring, and like I forget about it because like I kind of build all these applications, but something as simple as like logging in Java, right? Like if you want to introduce logging into your Java application, sure, it's not hard, but if it's not something you do every day, like, okay, I need a dependency on logback. I need an XML file to configure logback. What if I want to change the logging level at runtime? Like these are all things that I get out of the box with Spring. So I have this idea to kind of create some new videos for Java developers on like, I want to add logging, or I want to read YAML configuration, or I want to do this. Like, how do I do that in Java? Because I forget like these things are already kind of taken care of for me. And I just kind of worry about the kind of problem at hand instead of infrastructure stuff. So it's a fun exercise, and it was fun going through that episode yesterday and kind of talking about all the things you get out of the box.
Very cool. I will put the link for your podcast in the description of this video.
That'd be
So
awesome.
you Java Challenger, you can watch his podcast. And this one, for sure, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I I strongly believe that that's the role that a framework has to do
Hmm.
because the business problems we face as software developers are so complex already
Yeah.
that if we have to think about the infrastructure and everything else, like it's
Yeah.
impossible to work as a software developer.
Yeah. I mean, frameworks and libraries. Think about something like JUnit. If JUnit wasn't around, like how would you write your tests? Like I wouldn't even imagine like having to start like writing my own infrastructure to write a test. Something like JUnit has been like a lifesaver for 20 plus years for me. So there are so many great libraries and frameworks out there that really kind of, again, we talked about, we face the same problems over and over as software developers. And a lot of these great tools out there kind of solve those problems for us and allow us move on to the next one.
Yeah, JUnit is amazing. How many years it's been the most used library for the Java programming language?
Yep.
It's amazing, so
Invaluable.
good, invaluable. Yeah,
Yep.
and it helps us to make our code cleaner, to find bugs a lot quicker. It's
Yep.
amazing. So we talked about mentorship. And in your perspective, what is the importance of having a mentor as a Java developer?
Yeah, I think just being able to bounce ideas off someone, being able the other thing for me has always been, we talked about like kind of meeting people that are kind of walking the path that you want to walk, being able to see someone else who is kind of in that position that you want to get to. Like, okay, this is achievable. Let me talk to this person. Like, how did you get to where you are today? What are the things you focused on? And I'm not saying you need to like do exactly that, but having someone kind of tell you their path makes it more obtainable for me. Like, okay, I can see that. These are some things I can focus on over the next year, 3 years, 5 years to get to that point. And and as we talked about before, as a senior developer, it's or a mentor, it's kind of my job to say like, okay, I understand what you're going through and it's okay. We've all been there. Just kind of that reassurance that like, okay, this is hard, but it was hard for everybody and I can get through this. So yeah, just kind of that reassurance that someone else that has done this before is telling me that it's okay. I can keep going and do this. So
That's so comforting, right? This is
yeah,
like when you're struggling with something and you hear from a mentor, hey, I've been there already.
yeah,
It's okay to go through that.
yeah.
It changes so much. It makes you feel relieved and say, hey, okay,
This person struggled just like I am. And like without that, I feel like you feel like you're on an island, right? Like, oh, I'm on this island. I don't know how to get off this island by myself. But when you're on an island with 10 other people who have more experience than you in building a canoe, okay, I feel like I can get off this island because that person knows how to build a canoe. He's going to teach me how to build a canoe. And yeah, I just feel like it makes it so much easier. It's like, as you said, reassuring is a really good word.
reassuring. Yeah, that's awesome. And you're also writing the Fundamentals of Software Engineering book with a fellow Java champion, Nate Shuta.
Yep.
I hope I'm pronouncing his name
You are.
correctly.
Yep. Right on.
Okay, awesome. Can you tell me more about the book? It seems very interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, first off, it's an early release. So if you're on the O'Reilly platform, you can start reading it today. We have some chapters available, more chapters to come. But I feel like there are many paths to becoming a software engineering, right? A software engineer. Like I talked about like being in a 2-year school, there's undergraduate programs, there's computer science degrees, there's boot camps. There's many paths that you can take to become a software engineer. But I feel like when you get into like that first job or that before that first job, right? Maybe you didn't learn everything you need to know. And I feel like this book is really the gap between whatever you learned and becoming a successful software engineer. So obviously in a single book, we can't teach you everything you need to know, but it's more of a, okay, you're in your first position or your second position at a job. You're in the day-to-day life of being a software developer. How can we kind of improve on these skills? And it's not meant to be like read front to back every single day by every person. I think it's more of a like, okay, I'm working here. What are some things I can improve on? So as we mentioned, I talked about earlier, two of the chapters we have in the book are on reading and writing code. And again, they don't really teach you this in school that like reading, we read so much more code than we write. And it's such a fundamental skill to have as a software developer. So we kind of go into those things like reading and writing code. We talked about testing, like the importance of testing, but what are the different types of tests you can write? We go in, I just finished a chapter on career management, which I, to be honest, I wasn't excited to write because I was like, what do I know? I got through this chapter. I was like, this is my favorite chapter in the book. I had so much fun writing it, just talking about the experiences like we've been talking about today and just being able to like provide some insight, that reassurance to someone like we talked about imposter syndrome. Like this is a real thing and it's okay to have that. And I had a lot of fun writing that chapter. So it's really just meant to kind of help bridge the gap between some of those things you learn in school, some of the things you're learning on the job, and just to kind of reinforce some of those things that I think we talked about, like that will take you from that first position to the second position or junior developer to senior developer. Yeah, so there's a lot of good nuggets in that book, and I'm excited about it. It should come out later this year, and yeah, still kind of working on it. So it's been a lot of fun to go through, and I get to do it with one of my best friends. So Nate is a really good friend of mine, and it's been fun writing a book with someone else, being able to like, bounce ideas off of. So
That's such an important book because, like, when I finished my college, there was
mhm.
so much I didn't know.
Yeah,
There was so much. Like, I didn't even know, like, frameworks very well. I didn't know much about design patterns. I didn't know much about, like, bridging complex code
yep,
or writing the right code solution or
yep,
testing the code or even career management. I knew nothing
yes,
about that. So if
yep,
your book fills out a very important gap
yep.
where,
You
you
don't
know,
know what you don't know, right?
you don't know what you don't know. And if this book was available when I was going out of my college, that would
Yeah.
save me a lot of struggle for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the plan. And like I said, it's not going to be exhaustive. Like if you want a book on testing, there's entire books written on testing. You can go pick up one of those books. But hopefully we'll lead you to that book by reading like a chapter on automated testing and why it's important. There are entire books on career management, but this one chapter may kind of like get you more interested on building your career and the things that you could start to think about. We talked about it. Like I didn't know when I first started out, like where I would be in 20 years. I just thought like, I'm learning how to code. I'm going to code for the rest of my life. Like I'm just going to write code. Or at some point during my career, I thought, well, when I'm done coding, I guess I'm going to be a manager. I didn't have someone to tell me to start thinking about these things in year one. Like you have to be deliberate about it. Like there are many paths in our industry, and we kind of lay some of those out in the book. And it's like, you don't need to like, you get to pick your path. This is your career. You get to like decide on what you want to do in your career, but you need to be very deliberate about it too. Like if I want to be an architect, these are the things I need to start thinking about now. If I want to be a developer advocate, these are the things I need. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. These are the things you need to start thinking about now. So, yeah, like I said, it was a lot of fun putting that together. So,
Amazing. And I'm also curious about the initial path of a software engineer. So I don't know if college degree is getting obsolete with the boot camps you have nowadays, the
mhm.
online courses and everything we have. Like we have so much information on the internet.
Yep.
Do you have an opinion about that? So should a beginner do a college degree or do a boot camp or maybe study himself or herself with the internet content? What would be your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a tough question to ask because the first thing I would say is what walk of life are you in? Because you said a beginner, and a beginner could be an 18-year-old out of high school. A beginner could be a 35-year-old who wants to change careers, right? And so a 35-year-old with three kids at home probably can't go to a 4-year college, and I mean
No.
they could, but there's some real challenges there. I have two kids at home,
Yeah.
and I know how hard it is to like to just get through the day sometimes. So it really depends on what walk of life you're in, and then what do you want to do in this career. It's really hard, and I guess this is college in general, but it's really hard to say like, I want to be this type of engineer, so I'm going to go to a 4-year school and learn that. I think there are pros and cons to each of them. I think in a 4-year, like if you go to a really good college, if you were able to go to MIT, if you had that luxury, again, coming back to like understanding people's walks of life, not everybody has the opportunity to go to MIT and spend 4 years learning computer science. I wish I could have. I didn't have that opportunity. I would have jumped at that. But my situation was, hey, I'm going to go to this 2-year technical college that costs a lot less and that is obtainable to me. So it really depends on your situation. But I think no matter what your path is, you can get to the result that you want to get to. So walk of life is one thing, what you're interested in doing. If you're really interested in just kind of building web applications, do you need 4 years of computer science degree to do that? Probably not these days, right? But like maybe you're building the next Google. I mean, Larry and Sergey went to Stanford and like found each other there and like build the next like one of the greatest companies in the world. So really kind of depends on your aspirations, right? So I think there's a bunch of things that you need to think about in that situation. I think you can definitely go to a boot camp. You know, we had a 6-month boot camp where we took people who wanted to change careers and wanted to get into computer science. And 6 months still working full time was obtainable for them. They were able to kind of do that and do both of those. So yeah, I think it just depends on what you want to do. But I think there are so many great options today that we probably didn't have back then. Back 20 years ago, it was you to go 2 or 4 years school to do this. And I know there are a lot of like self-taught developers out there who don't go to college and just through all the information we have on the internet and mentors and going to conferences are able to teach themselves in land positions. So I don't have an answer for you. I guess that was my long way of rambling and saying it really depends on your situation, but you have many paths and you need to take a look at those and try to figure out exactly what you want to do.
Awesome. No, I like your answer. Thinking about the context of a person's situation, because
Yeah.
there might be someone who is like 36 years old, they have a family, and they
Mhm.
don't have the time of, studying 4 or 5 years in the college. They
Right.
need something a little bit faster. They need
Yep.
maybe to do a boot camp or learn by themselves. So it depends on the
Yep.
context. It depends on the situation. And like you said, like doing one of those very well known college degrees is
Yep.
definitely amazing. And you have opportunities of meeting maybe project partner like Google's founder.
Yep.
And like, yeah, there is obviously the pros and cons from any path you want to take. Very
Right.
good. So I'm also curious to know, how was your journey to become a Java champion?
Ooh, I'm wearing my shirt today too.
Yeah,
Um,
looks awesome.
I love this shirt. So yeah, this is really, it didn't become like something that I thought was obtainable till maybe like 5 years ago. You know, again, I've always enjoyed being a part of the community, the different like development communities that I've been in. That's really been fun for me. Like just like meeting other developers, talking shop, learning from other people, going to conferences, talking to like-minded people. Being involved in the community is something like that I've always like really enjoyed. And so kind of when I got into the boot camp, that kind of reinvigorated me like, okay, yes, this is what I love to do. I love being around students. I love teaching. And, you know, I've always looked up to Java champions and I was like, wow, that is like such a cool thing, like a cool title to have. And it wasn't for the title. It wasn't like, oh, I just want to put on my resume or anything. It was like, I want to be recognized for someone who is doing those things. Is like being involved in the community, teaching others, helping others, being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so, you know, I wrote about it. Like, I think every year I have like a blog post where I talk about what I did last year, things that I'm interested in this year. And I kept writing about like, Java champion is one of those career goals that I want to obtain. And so how do I do that? And I just kind of got more involved in the community. Now, obviously, getting into the position that I have now, which is curriculum developer or Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom or VMware, that helped a lot because it now like not only am I involved in like my off time or the weekends, like I am involved in the community every single day just through the position that I work on. So that gave me a really good opportunity to get more involved in the community. And yeah, I got the news early last year, and I can't even explain how excited I was. And again, there's you get a nice T-shirt, you get recognized, but it is recognition by your peers, right? And as I said at the beginning, I've never felt smart enough, good enough, no matter what I've done in my career. You know, I've never maybe not. I think saying that I don't belong isn't the right word, but just like do I belong here? And like just to be able to get that recognition from the smartest people in our industry who selflessly help other people through open source, through teaching, through mentoring. That was just like the coolest recognition ever. And I'm so proud of that. And I proudly tell everybody that, not again, not because of the title, just because of, I think it's part of the journey. It's not the destination, but it's just been like some validation that like, yes, all the hard work that you've done and all the things that you've done to help contribute to the community, they're paying off. So I must be doing something right.
Awesome. And you have the mindset of a Java champion because all the Java champions are very humble like you. And I strongly believe this is a superpower actually, because when you're humble, you are eager to learn and you are
Yes.
always hungry to learn more. But
Yes.
if you think you know everything, you become the arrogant person who thinks
Yes.
that doesn't need to learn anything else. And
Yeah.
then you are on your way for becoming
It's really,
obsolete.
if you've been doing this for 20 years and you wake up today and say, I know everything, I don't need to learn anymore, you're in for some trouble. You have to, like I said, we said this at the beginning, but this industry, it will humble you. And it is one of the things that you need, like, you have constantly got to be working at your craft. This is every day, every week, every month. I am trying to get better at this because again, that imposter syndrome, it's not that you can't do it, it's that you care about what you're doing. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And you mentioned the keyword to become a Java champion, which is community,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's big.
So it's, yeah, it's very big because the more you contribute to the Java community, the more impact you create to Java developers, the
Mm-hmm.
more the Java champions will look at your work and you become a potential candidate to become a Java champion.
Yep.
So by being consistent on your craft with, it depends because they're like each Java champion, they do kind of
I
a
was just going
different
to say that.
contribution.
Yeah.
Because there are Java champions who are book writers, there are Java
Right.
champions who give many talks, around the world. There are Java champions who created very important frameworks and libraries,
Open source projects. Yep.
open source projects, and Java champions who created a lot of content on the internet as well.
Yep.
So it depends on your way to contribute to the Java community. And if you're
Yep.
doing that and being visible
Mm-hmm.
between other Java champions, it will, the day that you might get nominated,
Yeah.
will
And like you
probably
said,
arrive.
the you have to write your own path. Like if you want to become a Java champion, you have to do it in your own way. There are Java champions out there like Venkat who writes, I don't even know how many books he's written now. It feels like he writes a book every like 3 months, and who gives 57,000 talks a year. Don't try and emulate Venkat. You will not be able to do that. I mean, definitely aspire to be a portion of what Venkat is, but we cannot all be Venkat. So you got to write your own path and like figure out what your way of contributing to the community is. As you said, some people are more interested in writing open source projects and being involved there. Some people want to write books. Some people want to give presentations. But the key word there, as you said, is community, being involved in the community. There are many different ways to do that. Find your way of being involved.
Yeah, I just mentioned Venkat Subramanian. I really like him, and I had the great honor of being nominated by Venkat Subramanian to
Wow,
become a
that is
Java
pretty
champion.
awesome.
That
Yeah.
was unbelievable. And when I learned that I officially became a Java champion, Venkat, by coincidence, he was giving a talk here in Dublin,
Oh, nice.
and he made the nomination in the company I was working for. And it was so nice. It was amazing.
Oh,
I
that's
couldn't
awesome.
believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, really? Am I dreaming?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll always remember Chris Judd, another Java champion. He's the one that nominated me, and I will never forget that. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, so grateful for Venkat Suramani.
Yep.
He made it so special.
Yep. He's awesome.
Yeah. So, what is your strategy for staying consistent on your YouTube channel?
Ooh, that's tough. So I guess I'd have a couple different answers. Now I'm in a pretty good position where it is part of my job and I'm encouraged to go out and create content around Java and Spring. So as a part of my day-to-day job, it gets a little bit easier. When it wasn't part of my day-to-day job, it was a little harder, right? Like I'd work all day and it's like on the nights and weekends, I would try to create a video here and there. I would say a couple of things on this. One, you have to pick a cadence that works for you. You can't just say, well, this person over here is making 5 videos a week. I'm going to make 5 videos a week. Because you may do that one week, but at some point you're going to burn out and you're not going to stick to that schedule. So you got to pick a schedule that works for you. Even if it's one time a week or one time a month, pick that schedule and stick to it. And I think if as long as you could stay on a consistent schedule, that really helps. And then the other kind of part of that is because you're on a consistent schedule, you get those reps in. Like, say it's once a week. Like, once a week, I know I'm going to create a video and publish it. I am doing that thing every week. If you do one video and then 3 months later do another video, you don't get that consistency of getting the reps in. And with that consistency, I always tell people, like, just pick out one thing that you can do to get better in the next video. Maybe my audio wasn't great in the last video. Let me figure out how to make sure my audio is a little bit better in this video. Maybe I work on adding some graphics to this video to make it a little bit more engaging. Maybe I work on like transitions or effects. Just pick out one little thing every video to get a little bit better at. And I think through consistency and doing that, you'll get better at what you do. And I still do that to this day. I'm always trying to like pick out one thing I can do a little bit better in my next video.
Yeah, I think I really suck with thumbnails and I'm
Yeah.
trying to improve with that. There's so many
Yep.
details, right?
Yep.
Thumbnails, there is the title, there is the description, like the whole thing. Like it's
It's crazy. And I talk to people about this. I don't think, unless you've actually made a few videos and published them, you don't realize everything that goes into it. It's not just me and you sitting down, create a video and we're done with it, right? Like there's the idea stage, like what am I going to shoot this next video on? Do I do any scripting about this? Okay, now I actually record it. Now I got to edit it. Now I got to publish it. Everything that goes into like publishing a video. And what people don't realize is that a 10-minute video could take 8 to 10 hours to create, start to finish, right? And so people ask me like, well, okay, well, I have like 4-hour tutorials on YouTube on like learning Spring. How long did that take? It takes a long time to do. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but you don't know what you don't know. So if you're interested in doing it, get into it and you'll start to find all the different things that go into like creating a video.
yeah. So a tip I give to developers who want to start creating videos on YouTube is to make it very simple
Yep.
because like you don't need to create a professional level video.
True.
It
Hmm.
just needs to get it done.
Yep.
Like it just needs to make a video well enough, good enough
Yep.
to be released.
Yeah.
Like you,
And I've read a bunch. There's a bunch of books back here on some of the bigger YouTubers out there who kind of teach this stuff, and they all say the same thing. Like your first 100 videos are probably gonna suck. Just accept that fact now, and understand that. Like, let me just try and get a little bit better in each one. And I think today with shorts, it's a lot easier, right? Like you can just sit down with a phone and record a short and upload that. That's like a minute long and you don't need to edit it. You can just kind of upload that and start there. So there's easier ways to get started today, I think. And as you said, it's not going to be great, but you're not going to get good unless you create that first video and then the next one and then the next one.
yeah, there is a quote that helps me a lot on my journey, which is done is better than perfect.
Yes, absolutely. I think in everything in life, early on, like I would always try to like make everything perfect. Writing a blog post, it would take me forever because I dissected every single word. Creating a video, everything's got to be perfect. And like you said, the more you kind of focus on that, the less you're going to do. And the only way to get better at something is to keep doing it over and over again. So,
Exactly, because I think that's one of the most common traps from many
yeah,
developers and people in general. They never
yeah,
start taking action because they are afraid of
yeah,
making a mistake. They
yep,
are afraid that their content won't be perfect.
Yep.
And actually, their attitude should be the opposite and should be, hey,
Yeah.
it's okay that my content won't be perfect. I accept that. Let's get going. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Because really, what I usually see from developers is that they are thinking, oh, I want to make it perfect. And then 1 year passes, 2 years passes, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and so
Right.
on. They never started.
Yeah, it always goes back to that Chinese proverb, like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. So you just have to do it and embrace failure. Failure is in everything in life. Failure is the greatest teacher of anything. And you should not look at it as a bad thing. You should look at it as I'm growing, I'm learning something new, and I'm getting better at this.
Yeah. Failure is the greatest teacher
Yes.
and the toughest one.
Yep. Yep. It really, really makes you question things at times, but
Yeah.
teaches you everything.
Yeah. It humbles you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I would say failure and like the idea of like being okay with failing because we talked about interviews earlier and there were a couple interviews that like throughout my career like I don't know if I'm going to get this job. Like this is really scary. I got to do 5 interviews with all these really smart people and they're going to ask me all these questions. And like I could have easily said no and just like stayed at my position or went to a different position. But like, the scariest things in life usually lead to like the best results, right? Like, I'm so glad I took that one interview because that really kind of like helped my career out. And it was scary, but it led to something great.
Yeah. And there's another lesson here. The more you expose yourself into uncomfortable situations,
Yes.
those are the times you are growing. And
Growing.
it
Yeah.
was it was so good. Like in 2017, I had the great opportunity of giving a talk at Java One. And it was an amazing moment in my career. And it was extremely uncomfortable for me because like it was maybe the best conference in the world for Java developers. And I met so many amazing people. I went to like the biggest parties from Google, IBM, Microsoft, and like I was very nervous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was very
It's
nervous.
good.
Like, yeah, I was very nervous. Like, I remember after this travel, it seemed that I had like 5 years growth in like a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Another big Java One conference is here. I'll be at it this year. I'm excited about that. My first Java One. So
Oh, congratulations! Unfortunately, I
yeah.
won't be on this
Oh
one, but oh, that's amazing. You were gonna be in your first Java One conference.
yes, excited about that. But you will be at Dev Nexus. We were talking about that before the show.
Actually, not. No, I won't be there.
Oh, I thought you were going to be there. Uh,
No, unfortunately not. But next year, I will submit a talk. I'll do my best to be there because Dev Nexus, every Java champion says it's amazing there.
oh, such a great conference. Yeah. Well, I said I got to try to make it out to Dublin one day. That would be awesome.
Oh, I'm yeah, really looking forward to make this happen.
All right.
Yeah, let's make it
Great.
happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, what do you do to keep up with technologies?
So I think there's a couple things. I'm going to go back to the book for a second because I was just writing about this. And I think, we get kind of inundated with everything that is coming out. Like, here's this new thing, this shiny new toy, you have to learn it, right? And I think you need to really kind of prioritize what you're going to learn because you can't learn everything. And that's another good tip. Like, you have to be okay with not knowing everything. You're not going to know everything. You cannot learn everything in this industry. There's just too much to learn, right? So you have to be able to prioritize it. One way that I've done this throughout my career, well, more recently, but there's this idea of a technology radar. And this kind of came out of ThoughtWorks, like building your own personal technology radar. What are the things like that I need to put in like the assess category? What are the things I'm going to kind of move forward with? But just being able to like prioritize the things that you want to learn. Again, we talked about where do you want to be in your career, deliberate skill acquisition, avoiding resume driven development, right? Don't just learn something to put it on your resume, but being very deliberate. So I think about this a lot. Like I have a list of things that I would like to learn, but what's important to me right now for my career, for my interests in learning. So I prioritize those. The way I kind of keep up is it's been different in life. I think, early on I was very much like dig into books and read those. I still have books, but I use books more of like a reference when I need to like think about a particular thing. I jump into a book and read that. I'm big into YouTube because I create YouTube videos. I'm also a consumer of YouTube. I love watching videos, probably to a detriment. I watch too much YouTube, but I enjoy YouTube because it can be a quick way to kind of just get brushed up on something. I listen to podcasts, whether I'm on the treadmill or in the car. I kind of stay up to date on things like that. More, I think later in my career, I really come to love documentation, especially projects that have good documentation. Before I would start with a book or a course. Now it's like if I want to learn this new thing, I start with the documentation because I think, through experience, I kind of know what I'm looking for now, like how to get from like A to B. So I start with documentation and then I use AI a lot these days for like learning a particular thing. Like if I need to like caught up on something or learn something brand new, you can ask an LLM if you can be very specific about it. Like, give me a roadmap to like learn this thing in 10 days. Like, what are the things I need to brush up on? So I think there's a variety of channels to learn these days and stay caught up. And it's really all about like what works for you.
So you mentioned a couple of things that are very important. So how do you prioritize your learning? Because as you said, there's so many things to learn.
Hmm.
Like there is Java, there is coding practices, there are microservices technologies,
Sure.
there is now AI. So many
Yeah.
things. Like how
Yeah.
to prioritize what we're gonna learn.
So again, I think for me it's a little bit different, at least in my role right now as kind of a champion of the community and as a Spring developer advocate. I make content. So I get a lot of questions and feedback on like, well, how do I do this? And that usually drives like the next video I'm going to make or the next article I'm going to write. And so I stay involved in the community and listen to like what are people interested in learning about right now? And if it's something I don't know, a year and a half ago, I didn't know a lot about AI. It's all right. The community needs to know about this. And this is like very relevant right now. I need to learn this. So like AI was a big thing a year and a half ago that I really kind of dove into. GraphQL was something we were kind of introducing on the Java side at Spring. We had this new project come out. I don't know when it actually came out, but I think 2.5 years ago, kind of when I got started, I was like, oh, people want to learn GraphQL. Like that's something I'm interested in as well. Let me go ahead and learn that. So for me now, it's really around like what the community is interested in because I'm creating a lot of content for the community. But it may also be like, hey, I want to build this cool new tool for myself. Or like I said, I have a personal website. I want to learn like Tailwind. I use Tailwind CSS on my personal website. Tailwind CSS 4 came out. Like what's new there? Like, so for me, it's in my career, what do I need to learn? And personally, what things am I interested in learning? Whether it's just for fun or because it scratches an itch or because it's something that I'm building on the side and I want to learn about that.
How do you know what the community wants?
Yeah, usually kind of cream rises to the top. I get a lot. It's tough to keep up on. I have, people send me emails, people send me Twitter DMs, people ask me on LinkedIn, people ask questions on the Spring Office Hours podcast. I get inundated with comments on YouTube videos. So I try to collect that as best as I can. And I have like I have a system in Notion where I kind of collect comments and put those ideas into like, okay, what is the next thing that I'm going to work on? And so once I hear people talking about it enough, it's like, okay, people are, I'll give you an example. The last couple of weeks, DeepSeek has been like everything everybody is talking about in the AI world. So Spring AI has support for DeepSeek now. Really quickly, that team was able, Mark and Christian were able to get support for that out into Spring AI. So I threw something up on LinkedIn yesterday, and within 12 hours, it had like 1,500 reactions and like 300 shares. And like, okay, people are interested in this. I can I throw things out there on Twitter and LinkedIn, whether it's like a piece of code or a comment, and like try to gauge interest in the community. And some of these things rise to the top. It's like, okay, I'm going to put some plans on hold. I guess I need to make a couple of videos on DeepSeek this week because people are really interested in that. So that's kind of how I do it. I listen to the community, and then at times I just make things that I'm interested in because like I want to learn this new thing and I'm going to make this thing so I can learn how to do that.
That's amazing. I like the approach of listening to the community, and also from, you know, from time to time, you create content that you want as well. So I think that's a very
Yes.
good and very powerful mix.
Yeah, and I heard, I don't remember who I learned that from, but one of the popular YouTubers out there said, "One for you, one for them." So do one for you, whatever you want to make. Who cares how many video views it gets? Who cares, what engagement you get on that video? You're making this one for you. And then maybe the next one is, this is a very popular topic in the community right now. Let's make this one for them.
Awesome. I like that. That's very good, very insightful. And you also mentioned about podcasts.
Yeah.
What podcast do you recommend Java developers to listen?
Well, obviously, if you're in the Spring world, you can listen to Spring Office Hours. Sean and I do that
Obviously,
every week.
yes. I'm gonna leave the
My
link here in the description.
Yes,
So you,
my good
yeah,
my good friend
listen to
Josh
this.
and coworker has a podcast as well called the Beautiful Podcast that I listen to. There are, as far as Java goes, there's one from Oracle, and the name is escaping me now. It's just the DevRel team at Oracle puts out a podcast, and they like deep dive into like certain topics. Like, here's a JEP. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And so I think it's Duke's Corner. That's it.
Luke's
And
Corner.
actually, I just did a quick search. There is a really good blog post by JetBrains. I retweeted this kind of a while ago when this came out. This was last year. Top 12 podcasts for Java developers in 2024. And there are a few on there. The other one on there is the Fuji podcast, which I have listened to before. I really enjoy that one. That has a lot of good content on there. I would say those two in the Spring ones that I listen to, at least in the Java world, those are kind of the ones I listen to. And then I listen to like a whole bunch of non-Java podcasts as well. So
It's okay. Like, are those podcasts somehow useful for career challenges or mindset? Because those ones are very good as well.
yeah, I mean, I listen to like a few business podcasts just because like there's kind of the entrepreneurial side of me that is always there. Like I enjoy like creating things. So I listen to a couple of those. I think I've been listening to a lot of AI related podcasts lately as just a mechanism to stay caught up with what's happening in the world of AI because it seems to be moving faster than any other world that we've kind of experienced so far. So I use it really as like a let me just kind of get caught up on what's happening in that world right now. And then if it's something that I'm interested in, I kind of deep dive into that later.
Yeah, I think that's a very good approach because the more you get caught up with those technologies, it's a
Mhm.
lot easier when you get an AI book, for example, and you read,
Yeah.
oh, I heard that. Oh, I
Yeah.
heard that. Oh, I heard
Yeah.
that. Oh, okay. I know what's going on here. Other than you get a book and you know nothing and you say, oh my God,
Yep.
like,
I know.
what is that?
What is all this gibberish?
Yeah, I think that's a very good strategy. Like, we don't need to know, you don't need to go very deep into those
Right.
technologies, but at
Yeah.
least have a grasp, like a general knowledge
Yeah.
helps so much to learn.
Yeah. If you're in a conversation at work with like coworkers and they're talking about this thing, oh, I heard about that. I can at least like I am in the conversation. I don't need to be an expert on it, but I can still talk about it. Right.
Exactly.
Oh, another one I forgot about is Air Hacks with our friend Adam Bean. I like that podcast as well. I love
Oh yeah.
his kind of interview style, and he always starts the conversation with, "What was your first computer?" Yeah, I like that podcast as well.
Yeah, I've been to Fuji's podcast and Air Hacks. It was awesome.
Yep, nice.
Yeah, very happy that I was there. Definitely very good podcasts, and I definitely recommend them. Definitely.
Cool.
So my mentees sometimes they struggle to be consistent with learning technologies.
Yep.
what advice would you give developers to be consistent on learning? What they can do to study consistently, even if
Mhm.
they have very busy lives like family, 9 to 5 job?
Yeah, you have to be consistent is the big word there, the key to it. And I think I heard this at one point, like you're never going to find time to do the things that you need to do. You have to make time for them, right? And so, not everybody, yeah, people have families, people have obligations outside of work, and maybe you can't study every single night or learn something new every single night. But there has to be a point in your calendar every week that you can do that. And whether it's at 8 o'clock p.m., and you just got the kids to bed and you have an hour, make sure you are consistent with that. Instead of getting the kids to bed and going and watching TV, I spend an hour doing this thing twice a week or whatever. So you have to make time for it and you have to sacrifice. Like I said, I'm sure you want to just sit on the couch and watch some TV, and that could be fun, but if you want to continue to make progress and learn something new, you have to be deliberate with it. So make time. If there's a way to block out time in your calendar at work, do that. Most employers are not going to say, I don't want you spending any time learning something new this week. Hey, yeah, I used to like block out my lunch, and yeah, I would be eating my lunch at my desk, but I'm like watching a video or like reading an article. Even that is, as simple as it might sound, is you being deliberate about learning something. Maybe you do that 3 days a week, right? So blocking time off at lunch, maybe finding time on your calendar during the week at work to learn something new, and you can relate that back to work. Like, hey, we're exploring this new language or this new framework. I'm going to spend 2 hours on a Friday afternoon every week learning about that, right? But you have to be consistent. You have to be deliberate. You have to make time. You're not going to find time in your calendar, your personal life to do this unless you make time for it.
Yeah, I really like what you said. Sacrificing, you need to sacrifice the time you would watch TV or do whatever else.
Yeah.
You have to make time because the time won't like suddenly appear for you. Like you won't
Oh, I
have.
have 8 free hours today.
And the other point that I highly agree with you because it's part of our jobs to learn, right?
Hmm.
I don't really see any problem of a software developer blocking, I don't know, half an hour or, yeah, half an hour a day in
Yeah.
their work time. I think this is part of our jobs. So
Yep.
there is really no harm on doing that. As long as you deliver whatever you
Hmm.
promise to deliver, it's okay to
Yeah.
book some time for learning during our work time because like in every project there will be a downtime. You want to be working every
Yeah.
day hours. It's impossible. That won't happen. So
Right.
like don't be afraid of learning during our
and
work
and
time.
and bring yeah, and bring it back to the job. Like,
Yeah.
maybe at your job you're talking about like you're finding problems with like scalability, at least let's say in the Java world, and you're not taking advantage of like virtual threads in the JDK. Say, hey, I think I have a solution for this. I'm going to go off a couple hours a week and research this thing that is probably going to help us out. I mean, no employer is going to say, no, don't do that. Like that's a waste of your time. So, and part of this is like selling it, right? Selling it to management. Like you can't just say, hey, dear boss, I've crossed out 4 hours every Friday afternoon because I want to learn something new. Like that's not the approach that you can take. You gotta like bring it back to, hey, we are doing this thing. I really need to get better at this thing. I think it's going to help our team if I'm much stronger in this particular skill, and it's probably going to help the performance of our product out. Is it okay if I block out a couple hours on a Friday afternoon?
Yeah, and there are companies who make the Friday like a free Friday a
Right.
day, and that helps developers to try something new, try new technologies, and I think that's a very good approach for developers to be interested in growing and learning new things.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I know that this doesn't happen in many companies, but in some happens. So
Yeah.
that's also a good approach from like not from the side of the developer, but from the side of the company.
Yep.
What are the technologies that a backend Java developer should learn to call themselves as senior Java developers?
I think you need to be proficient in Java. So you got to master like kind of the core fundamental skills, like being able to use things like streams and lambdas and whatnot. Getting into like concurrency, some of the JVM internals, learning different frameworks and libraries that are out there, building things like APIs and talking to databases, things like distributed systems. I think there is the idea of like a T-shaped developer, right? Like being very strong in certain things. So from a Java developer's perspective, that is, I'm very strong in the core language, some of the libraries that we use, some of the frameworks that we use. And then across that T, I know about like distributed systems. I know about some architecture and observability. So yeah, I think that T shape always kind of helped me out. Let me be strong in this area and let me at least know on a surface level some of these other things.
Yeah, I like this T-shape kind of view because it makes it clear that you don't need to know everything very deeply.
Right.
It's
Right.
important. It's impossible.
Yep.
So, what books and courses do you recommend for Java developers?
I can't think of any courses off the top of my head. There are some books that stick out. So first off, documentation. I'm a huge fan of documentation now. I have like probably in the back there the core Java books. They're like the big Bibles. I wouldn't recommend reading those front to back, but like those are always good if you just want to like flip through on a particular subject. There is a book called Effective Java, written by Joshua Block. That is on like the third edition. Still, I think it was probably like 2017, 2018 that third edition came out. Still very relevant to me. Like there's always like really great nuggets in there. I've always enjoyed the Head First books. So I remember reading like Head First Java way back in the day, probably 20 years ago. There's a newer Head First Java out by Kathy, Burt, and Trisha G. So I enjoy that one. Ken Cousin is one of my good friends. He has so many books on Java and Groovy and testing, but he has a book called Modern Java Recipes. And I like the recipe approach. Like, here's a problem, here's how you solve it in Java, instead of just like front to back, here's everything you need to know about Java. I think those are good. I think, as a developer too, like really getting good at some of the fundamentals. So Git is very important. There's a head first Git book by Raju Gandhi, who's also here in Ohio. So I'm a big fan of Raju's in that book. And then I use IntelliJ IDEA like every single day, and I still learn things about it. Again, by Trisha G. There's another good book of Getting to Know IntelliJ IDEA by Trisha G. and Helene Scott. So I think getting good at like the tools and the fundamentals are always a good thing. So I think those fundamentals and then some of those Java books out there are pretty good. I There are courses out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are so many good like YouTube channels out there, both in Java and Spring, that I think are really good resources as well.
Which YouTube channels, for example, other than yours?
Java Brains has always been a really good one. I enjoy
Java
the
Brains.
Java Brains channel. I am drawing a blank, but that one really sticks out to me. I've always enjoyed his style of teaching, and I got to sit on a podcast with him at some point, and that was a lot of fun too. So, but yeah, I like that channel. I have a good list somewhere, so I'm sorry I'm drawing a blank, but there are so many out there.
That's okay. And obviously, your channel as well. And we can't forget about your book.
Yeah, that'd be
And
great. And like I said, it is out on O'Reilly now. So Fundamentals of Software Engineering, if you're on the O'Reilly platform, you have access to the early access now. You can start reading it, and we have new chapters coming soon.
very good. Send the link to me, please.
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
also put that on the description of the
Okay.
video. And wow, thank you so much, Dan. It's so much information, so much valuable information. So, what essential career lessons would you like to share with the Java Challengers audience? I think we went through so many lessons, but
Yeah.
if you have a specific one that maybe we forgot to mention.
I don't think we forgot to mention it, but I think I just want to double down on it that like it's okay if you're feeling lost. It's okay if you're feeling like you don't belong, you're not smart enough. Most of us have had these thoughts before. And as you said, if you can find a mentor, because talking to somebody else about this will give you that reassurance that like we've all been in your place. I don't care what your background is, what your educational background is, what your life background is. If this is something you're interested in doing, you can absolutely do it. And it's not going to be easy, but it can be very rewarding. And so if it's something you're interested in, stick with it. Accept that feeling of imposter syndrome. We've talked about it a lot today, but it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, just enjoy. Also enjoy the journey, because I think at times I haven't enjoyed the journey as much as I wish I would have, because it can be so stressful and overwhelming at times. And you're in the middle of this 2 week sprint and it's the most important thing in the company for 2 weeks. Like it's not. Like it's at the end of the day, it's a great career to have, but there will be ups and downs. Enjoy the journey. It's not all about the destination. Have fun with what you're doing, and yeah, just enjoy what you're doing. And I think we are very blessed to be in this industry. I feel lucky at times that I somehow fell into this. I know I didn't, but like, why did I get interested in this? And it just turned out to be an amazing opportunity, and for me, for my family, and for my career. So enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's such an important lesson because enjoying the process, we have to keep in mind that our career it's a long time. It's a long
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
if you're not enjoying the process, we're not basically enjoying life. So
Yeah.
such an important point. Enjoy the process. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to feel that maybe you're not good enough. And, to keep studying, keep doing your best.
Yep. Absolutely.
Dan, thank you so much. It was a privilege to have you here. We had so many insights here in our conversation, and I'm really glad you could participate in the Java Rockstar Career series. Thank you so much for
Uh,
that.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Dan.